That music you just heard was The Flight of the Bumblebee by Rimsky-Korsakov. Any guesses about what instrument was actually playing the piece, though? So what do you get when you cross the Scottish bagpipes with an Australian didgeridoo? What you heard is their love child. This beautiful thing right here that I was playing is called the bassoon. Today, I'm going to prove to you that the principles of classical music can and will 10x your business returns if you use them properly. My name is Kim Walker, founder of VirtuosoCEO.com, and in my first career I had the privilege of playing principal bassoon in some of the world's greatest orchestras with amazing musicians such as the London Symphony Orchestra, the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, and the radio orchestra in Torino called the Rai Torino. And then, as a decade soloist with legendary conductors such as Ashkenazi, Leonard Bernstein, Antal Dorati, Scholti, and many more. Now, 2 decades on as a senior executive, a dean and director, and raising over $123 million, I coach CEOs in Australasia's ASX-listed companies to double, 6x, and even 10x their business growth. I call these men and women my virtuoso CEOs. The two worlds of business and classical music are ostensibly the same. What it takes to unlock the beauty and power of a world-class orchestra is the same process as unlocking quantum business success. You see, I've discovered that the one thing that makes a good conductor great is the same thing that makes a good CEO great. Of course, the conductor is the CEO of an orchestra. So what is the one thing that every great conductor and virtuoso CEO have in common? I believe the answer is rhythm. Could you please repeat that word together with me? Rhythm. Come on, play with me. Rhythm. And now you see I'm conducting. Because I believe there are 3 things that make a good orchestra great, and they happen to be the same 3 things that make a good company great. Rhythm is one of them, of course. And then there's melody, and then there's harmony. Now, if you're a little confused about how rhythm, harmony, and melody are relevant to quantum business growth, just stay with me, because I'm going to prove it today by example. So let's start with rhythm. The great Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, he considered rhythm to be the first element of music. How come? Because rhythm defines the unstoppable musical pulse that underpins the key relationship of melody, harmony, and even discord at times. Like in business, the rhythm is the heart of what drives execution to realize growth. The rhythm of your productivity, the pace of innovation, and how consistently you manage your community engagement underpins not only the culture, but ultimately the success of any business. Rhythmic expertise, it defines orchestras and the conductors who direct them. It's a non-negotiable. And conductors set the pace that determines how the music evolves, how the orchestra executes, amplifies their message into a brand of excellence. In business, I've observed that there are 2 interferences to rhythm that prevent quantum growth for any CEO. The first is by forcing the creative process. That means a company executes an initiative without proper planning and bolts before everything is in place. The second is by resisting creation, which to me means a lack of execution because of analysis paralysis. Now, that's why it is the virtuoso CEO's job to set the rhythm of the company. Corporate rhythm directly impacts a company's direction, the growth rate, and the wealth of its stakeholders. Healthy heart and healthy rhythm favors creation and growth of any company. Steve Jobs proved it with Apple. Jack Welch proved it with General Electric. Meg Whitman proved it with eBay. And today, Sir Richard Branson does it with his Virgin brand all the time, and Elon Musk is doing it in spades with Tesla. So let's go back in the history of rhythm, where 300 years ago, I can say, the bassoon was the instrument most responsible for the bass line, which defines the rhythmic pulse for the rest of the orchestra. Now that was true back then, and it is true today. Even more interesting is how different the same score of music can sound when different conductors interpret the rhythmic flow of that same music. To prove it, I will play 4 brief excerpts from classical music composers. You've probably heard of all of them: Beethoven, Mozart, Vivaldi, and Bach. Let's start with Ludwig von Beethoven. After the first performance of his 9th Symphony, Beethoven convinced himself that he was an abject failure. But he was wrong. When he simply turned around, he found that he was receiving 5 standing ovations. Virtuoso CEOs who change the rhythm of their company, they don't notice those standing ovations from their stakeholders until they decide to unplug their eyes. So let's have some fun. I'm going to play 2 versions of the same piece. As a virtuoso CEO, you decide which one you prefer. When I'm done, I want you to vote on version A or version B. So here's version A of Beethoven's Violin Concerto, the bassoon part. And here's version B. These are going to be the same notes, a slightly different vibrato, and a little bit less rhythmic rigor. Now, which one do you prefer? Now let me play it again, so you really get it. Here's version A, a little sportier version. And here again is version B. Do you like version A or do you like version B? Guess what? No matter what version you choose, you're right. The only time you would be wrong is if you changed the rhythmic style halfway through the piece. And that, sadly, is how most companies get into trouble. They start growth with a certain rhythm and then decide to change the rhythm to protect that growth. So, did you prefer version A or B? Because ultimately you decide which one you like more. To win in business or music, your choices have got to be in sync with your audience, and you need plenty of what I call perfect practice. What most people don't realize is that to be any type of virtuoso genuinely requires focus, clarity, and investing 10, 15, even 20,000 hours of practice at a time. When I began my career, women weren't yet allowed to play in the top orchestras of Berlin, London, or Vienna. And in 1985, there wasn't even a ladies' changing room backstage at the Barbican. Now, the conductor of an orchestra is a lot like the CEO of a business organization who brings vision and the winning psychology of influence. About rhythm, the French composer Claude Debussy once said, "Music is the space or the silence between the notes. C'est l'espace entre les notes." In music, you see, the notes in a score, those black dots on the paper, they're important. But the conductor's interpretation of the notes and the space in between them is the magic that builds the successful relationships and the power of a performance, which actually determines the quality and the quantity of your next performance or business opportunities, as well as your audience growth and brand presence. Virtuoso CEOs who master the rhythm of leadership, ultimately they shift from quantity decisions to quality decisions, or the space in between the notes that delivers profound value. Let's move to principle number 2, melody. Melody is the business of the CEO's message or the execution statement. A business melody defines the purpose, the passion, and profits of the company. And when it comes to music, we can't talk about melody without mentioning Mozart. He was a master, a virtuoso of making melody ring true. The tune that's the easiest part of the music to remember, and the part that anyone can hum. Now, I'm going to play two melodies created by Mozart, Melody A and Melody B. And again, I'll ask you which one you prefer. Here's Melody A, La ci darem il mano, from one of his operas. And here's Melody B from his bassoon concerto. Do you like Melody A or do you love Melody B? As a Virtuoso CEO, once I know what's your preference today, I would only play that version. So if it was version A, I would only play version A from now on. Why? Because you're valued just like the customers of any company. And if that's the one that you prefer, that's the one I play. Because actually, I love them both. One key distinction I really want to make here is that a CEO is a virtuoso only and only if he or she listens to the customer. Not enough CEOs do that these days. You've got to get out of the ivory tower and get into the trenches to find out what your customers want. Now, how do you know which melody your customers prefer? Simple. Market research. In business, preferences vary based on demographics, psychographics, and market forces, all of which measure demand. So it's not just about changing the rhythm of the company that leads to 10x growth. Sometimes you actually have to change the melody altogether. And that brings us to the third principle. Now remember, principle number 1 was rhythm. Principle number 2 we just covered is melody. The third principle of becoming a virtuoso CEO is harmony. Harmony in music is all about how the sounds played beneath and around the melody provide texture or mood. Now, the same melody will sound very different with one harmony or another. Let me give you a concrete example with the help of Antonio Vivaldi and Johann Sebastian Bach. These two composers had uniquely different composition styles, even though they both epitomized the Baroque era. Now, they used the same instruments, similar genres, yet they bring different Baroque harmony, like two divergent yet equally iconic company cultures. Vivaldi was known as the Red Priest, mostly because of his bright orange hair. His 700 concerti or more are like individual tone poems, all written for these young orphan girls who were studying at La Pietà school in Venice. Now, who would ever have thought that almost 300 years later, Vivaldi is still the #1 box office hit? That's an amazing return on investment. Equally outstanding is Johann Sebastian Bach. 8 years younger than Vivaldi, Bach was a devout Lutheran who fathered 20 musical children. Now that is the most successful family business I know of. But what is really the standout is that his Baroque masterpieces, they are appreciated as much or more now than when he actually wrote them. This time I'm not going to play. I simply want you to listen. Excerpt 1 is Vivaldi and excerpt 2 is Bach. Antonio Vivaldi's excerpt is taken from Winter, his Four Seasons concerto. So listen to how the rhythm and melody create a dance-like harmony. Now here's excerpt 2, an adagio from a Bach concerto. So listen to how the rhythm and melody create a perfect harmony. Now, I'm not going to ask you to vote on which harmony you prefer because harmony is harmony. When a virtuoso CEO has found the right rhythm with the right melody, then he or she doesn't find the right harmony. The right harmony finds him. If you're a seasoned CEO, then you already know how critical it is to be in harmony with your leadership teams, your management teams, with your suppliers and vendors, and ultimately, of course, your customers. Harmony is what makes 10x growth absolutely possible. Yet it's impossible to be in harmony if you've chosen the wrong rhythm or paired it with the wrong melody. So let me summarize this talk about virtuoso CEOs with a final analogy. The musical score is the mission statement of the organization, whose power is reflected by a successful return on investment and a strong balance sheet for any business organization. Rhythm is the vision of that organization's CEO. And melody is the marketing message which must be in sync with the target audience. Mathematically, businesses might look the same. Based on their numbers, both should be making a profit. The human element and personal resonance is what makes the difference. Harmony is the culture that the virtuoso CEO espouses, not only in the company's culture, but also in his customer communities. Rhythm, melody, and harmony provide the resonance to create a quantum leap in business growth. This is true for virtuoso CEOs running world-class companies such as Zappos, Facebook, Tesla, Apple, and Amazon. They figured out how to tap into global business harmonics. So, in my final moment of this talk, I will leave you with 3 important questions. 1, does your organization have a rhythm you can support? 2, does it have a winning melody that inspires you? And 3, is your organization in harmony with its management, its customers, and stakeholders? A good CEO will answer yes to 1 or 2 of these questions. But the world-class virtuoso CEO will answer yes to all 3. I believe you can have all 3. I believe that any CEO is potentially a virtuoso CEO. And I believe that your organization has the capability of getting a standing ovation from its customers every single day, as long as they live into the 3 principles I've outlined here today. My name is Kim Walker, and I hope our paths cross again very soon. Thank you.